And what's going on, everyone? It's Uche and Joku, Sneaker Principal, and back on the Principal podcast. And again, I feel like every time we come here, we do something different. Last time, we had a takeover where I was interviewed by an assistant principal in Atlanta, who great school leader, and he had questions about leadership and the process of moving to principalship. So we turned it into him interviewing me. But today, I have a very special, I'm not going to say guest, but this person is not a guest. This person is part of my family, had a huge hand in me surviving one of the toughest years I had as an administrator in New York City schools. And this is Dr. Singh. And Dr. Singh is here with us. And I want to interview her, but I think she has an amazing story. And I think, as I posted on LinkedIn, the stories of leadership, and especially in education, are very important because not too often do we find authentic stories about assistant principals and superintendents and people in that capacity, especially people of color. So, with that being said, welcome, Dr. Singh.
Hi,
How
thank
are
you for
you
having
doing?
me. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
No, it's definitely a pleasure. And one of the things I want to do is to start off by giving you the floor to speak on who you are, how did you even come to education, and we'll go from there. This is just a conversation. All
Sure.
right?
So who am I? I want to relate to go back to my roots. I'm Guyanese. I came here when I was 15 years old. My mom and my parents, mom and dad had a vision that Guyana was not able to give us at the time. So we packed up and they brought a family here to Guyana at 15 years old, which was a big shell shock,
I can
right?
imagine.
Yeah, and but it worked. It worked out, as you can see. It worked out very well. I attended. We moved to Brooklyn, and I attended high school in Brooklyn. Um, which was an interesting transition because one of the things, and I do want to share this, and I'm not an E&L student, but I wrote in British. We came from a British education, and I still remember my first paper that I wrote was the teacher marked it up in red because we spell like honor
You
HONOUR,
throw that you
the
in there.
OUR, and many other words, and I had red all over my paper, which was sort of like uh because prior to that, back in Guyana, I went to a very well established school. I passed common entrance, and I went to one of a boys' school that became co-ed the year that I attended. So, and it's one of the five top schools in Guyana. So here I am coming into New York City, and my paper was all written up in red. But needless to say, that's always an experience, and we know what not to do, right? We
Yes.
learn what not to do rather than what to do sometimes. I graduated from that school as valedictorian. Uh,
Uh, I didn't know that.
yes, I was.
Wow. Okay.
I keep a lot of things on the wrap. So, but yeah, so which was this was exciting. But also taking that. So education has always been something that we aspire for. My parents have always said, and I remember, that's one thing that someone cannot take from you is your education, and that stays with us. And we saw how hard they worked to get us to that point. It was not the model for us. We knew that our parents didn't have the highest education, but they had the common sense to know what it meant to be educated. And my mom always spoke about education. She says, I was around people who I saw that was educated. I heard this woman speak, and I wanted my children to speak like that. So it was always ingrained in us somehow, somewhere. And again, our path is always sort of, I don't know if it's destiny or what, but while I was in high school, I started the youth employment program and I went to be enrolled into the program. But the Board of Education at the time, Board of Education, instead of Department of Ed,
Hmm.
was they were the holder of that program. And they took a liking to me and they brought me in. They were like, "You're going to come work here. You're going to work for us." with us. And that's how I ended up at the Board of Education. And I never left. From there, I was a student aide, then I became a paraprofessional, and I worked as a para for about 10 years.
Wow. So that's amazing because we never had I've known you for many years. We've never had a conversation about your early education, especially high school, coming from Guyana, common entrance, because I did the
Hmm.
common entrance as well as Nigeria.
A lot in common.
I never thought about that. We are both from British colonies,
Yes.
and I had the exact same experience coming to America, and color and favor and honor, like those U's, and
Yes.
being told by my teachers, you spelled that wrong, and I'm like looking at them like, what are you talking about? I spelled that wrong. And I share often with people that even though I spoke English in Nigeria, and when I came here, I felt like an L
Hmm.
because there was so much just in the written language that was different, but also how we use language.
Correct.
But they would say things to me, and I'd be like completely confused, like I had no idea what they were saying because it was English words, but context was always a challenge, you know. But again, you college and tell us about that. What was college like for you? And did you from the jump knew you were going to go in education?
So I know that education is always important. That I do know. I knew it then. I know it now. I live, breathe education. Um, However, one of the things that I'm just trying to sort of go back into myself here. It, no, I don't think education. I know I need to be educated, but I didn't know I was going to be thrust
In
into
education and be
in
an
education.
educator. Okay.
Correct, correct. I knew I wanted to get a bachelor, and I did that. I went for my bachelor's. I went to Hunter College, and from there, again, I was still working in the New York City Board of Education at that time, and and one of the things I have to say that really drew me is the culture. I love the culture of New York City and the school system. It doesn't matter which school I enter, I feel the same warmth. And I really want to share that. I know that's not an experience for a lot of people, but it's my experience. And so from there, I went on. Actually, I went out to private industry for a minute.
Okay. What did you do? And what did you do?
I worked for a brokerage firm,
Okay. So like
and
in real estate or like in
no,
like securities finance?
security finance.
Did not know that.
I know that.
I feel like we've had a relationship strictly in, like I know your family,
Yes,
I know your grandkids, I know
yes.
your daughter, I know, your
Son-in-law,
son-in-law, who's also from the same tribe as I am, is
correct?
Igbo, but we've never had a conversation outside of education. So finance. So
Yes.
okay, please let me stop interrupting.
Um, so actually, I enjoy that part, but it wasn't fulfilling.
Okay.
It was great. It was great skills building. I learned a lot. I learned some of the things, and I will share that I brought a lot from that finance experience back when I returned to the Department of Ed, because I think at the time Board of Education was a different place, right? It was a place. It has definitely transitioned to where it is now, with a lot of work put into it. But so I felt that going into finance was, or going into the private industry, gave me some skill set that I was really able to bring back to the city, that I felt was useful, much more useful, especially with the growing need for computers and word processing and Excel and all of those amazing skills that we need now, that we take for granted. Back then, it wasn't, not everybody knew it. And I think that is what helped me move along the path, because I had something that not everybody knew. So it was, and being helpful, right? That's part of my nature, is to be helpful. And I think that's how I sort of maneuver through the system.
That's very cool because my background before education was in sales and marketing. And I know for a fact those skills that I got from in that space,
Hmm.
I used at day one
Right.
because anyone who knows me, like I'm a big brand person. I'm always trying to sell and
Yes.
build, tell a story.
Yes.
So just having that background outside of education was very important. Not to say people who just go straight to education are lacking anything, but I think those perspectives,
Right.
you know, are very important, and I know it's had a huge impact on how I've developed as a school leader, and even the schools I've led, how those spaces have flourished.
Definitely. We talked earlier prior to this podcast, we were talking about skills, right? Learning skills and how important it is to sustain those skills. And I think that's what happened during my time in the private, bringing some of those skills that we may not have learned if I was in the city system, because back then there wasn't a need for that, right? And so stepping out and coming back in was really a great experience for me. And I returned for so many reasons. I've maintained my friendship here in the city, in the school system. And one of the things, every time I spoke to one of my friends, she would be like, I'm off today. I'm off today. I'm like, hold on, how many days do you get off? Because I forgot, right?
Yeah.
After stepping out. And so I was like, you know what? I am coming back somehow, right? And so when I left, I was actually a teacher. I transitioned once I received my degree. I became a teacher assigned. So then I left, and now I'm returning. Right? I want to return, but how do I return? Do I come back as a teacher, or what does that look like? And my friend always, there's always someone, and I do want to stress that too. There's always someone who takes you along. We meet people for different reasons,
Very true.
this particular person, she has been definitely an angel in disguise, or maybe just an angel, not necessarily in disguise, who carried me through. And she says, you know what, you need to come back and as an administrator. And I said, and we had a conversation. I was dropping her off, that evening I was dropping her off, and she says, you need to be an administrator. And I said, you know what, the next morning I got up and I went and applied to Toro. I put in my admissions paper, and I called her and I said, guess what I just did?
The
I
next day.
start the next day, the very day, because you and I are very similar in that way. When we get something in our heads, we
Yeah.
just go.
It's
It
that
just
It's
has.
that Gemini power. We're obsessive compulsive.
Yes, it just has to show up, and we just take it. And that's where my journey started. And also my journey was really about, I got married very early, in I got married at 18.
Wow.
Yes. And I had my daughter when I was about 19 years old. And I knew that I had to be a model for her. And I also knew that I had to give her a different life that I had. And not the love. It wasn't about love, but just in terms of, coming from a third world country, coming here, things are basic. And which is nice. Simple is nice. But I also knew that I needed to work a lot harder to give her some of the things that I would like her to have, extra activities, after school and things like that. So those were my driving force. My daughter, and just making sure that I can be a really good role model for her. And that took me.
So you were in a DOE as a teacher, then you left,
Went to private.
went to private industry. How long were you going for?
I would say maybe about 8 years.
Well, oh wow, wow.
Yes.
So you were gone.
I was gone.
Okay.
I was leaving.
You
Because,
listen. I know a lot about leaving, but I get pulled back in less than a year every single time. But
yes,
so 8 years, then you apply to be an administrator. So that's interesting, but that's a very different. That's not very typical. Where like you leave, go into a program to be an administrator, and you come back as an administrator.
that's correct. Well,
So tell us about that part. Like, what did I mean? How did that happen? You apply for a position, or was it networking?
both.
Okay,
I got my degree, administrative license, and I again, my angel, she was situated in a position that she was able to see where the vacancies were. She introduced me to a principal who was looking for an AP at the time, and from there I got hired.
okay. This is a first for me. I've never usually because usually it's you're teaching, then you get into a program, and maybe you get a position in your school. But again, the power of those relationships that are
Right.
established, but
Right.
also having a strong skill set because
Correct.
again, you had a teaching background,
I
then you
did.
had an administrative background for eight
Correct.
years in the private sector, and you
Correct.
bring those into the building. So now you're gone for 8 years,
Yes.
okay, and you're coming back not into not central office, not a district office position, back into the school. You left a
Yes.
school as a teacher, coming back after 8 years, 8 years as into back into school as an AP. What was that like? Was it elementary, middle school, high school?
It was a high school.
Okay, and how much of a shock to your system was it coming back?
It wasn't much because I belong. I
Wow.
realized, I mentioned earlier there was something that was missing when I was in the private industry. And when I entered back into the school system, I belong. I knew that I probably shouldn't have left. But everything happens for a reason. I am a true believer that everything happens for a reason. And so I came back and I loved it. Of course, it was a learning curve for a minute, learning a lot of because being administrator is a different role. So taking on that role, but that first year was a tough year learning. But after that, I was able to pick up from there.
What was the toughest thing you experienced? Like you said, but I'm hearing a lot of like I love this. But what was that moment you were like, ugh?
Did I make the right decision? I will tell you, I did not feel that
Are you
way.
serious?
Never did.
Not a parent? You didn't get cussed out
No,
or like
no.
you have to break up a fight and
You
broke
know,
like
I have been very blessed in terms of dealing with interacting with others, and no, I've never really. I think when I became a principal, I might have gotten cursed out, but it wasn't as an AP.
if you're a principal, you've never been cussed out. You're lying. You are
Yes,
lying.
yes,
Like especially if you're in New York City. I'm
yes,
sorry, you're gonna get cussed out at some point in time.
definitely. But no, I belonged. I really found my calling.
Okay, so now you're in AP. So you're at that school for how long?
I was in that school for 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Yes. And we built it up, right? The school was started, I believe I was there from when the school was in ninth grade, and then it was a brand new school. So it was really a nice experience. I wasn't fully thrown into a school that had four, 9 through 12. It was just the ninth grade, and we built a 10th. So it was really nice to be part of that experience as well.
So it gave you an opportunity to not just be fully thrown in.
Correct.
So not only that, you got to build those relationships with those kids, that staff, and together grow. Okay.
Definitely. Yes.
So now you were there for 5 years. Why did you leave?
Um, I want to blame it on being a Gemini, but I can't. I felt I needed to. I'm always looking for what's the next step, and not that I'm looking to leave, all right, but I always want to better myself. And I was in this one school learning what that one school offer, which was a lot. It was a great experience, but I wanted to experience what is the New York City school system like, right? So I went in. I was also networking, which is a great if that networking and relationship are the two things that has brought me to today. Net, right, building relationships.
So what was it you were looking for exactly?
I wanted to know more. I teetered out at 5 years.
Okay.
I felt like I've been there, done that. Now, because every year seemed, even though we were building the school, we built it into 4 years, but then the fifth year was like, okay, I've done this. And it was time to spread my wings to learn more. I'm a learner.
Yes.
As you know about me, I'm definitely a learner, and that's why we have such good conversations. But so I had the opportunity to go work in a network. I think at the time the networks were starting up, and I got another friend of mine, reached out to me and said they're looking for someone in the network. Would you be interested? And that was where I moved on to. I got hired to become an ed administrator. So I was still in a leadership administrator role, but now we were working with more than one school.
So explain to those people who, because I remember the networks, because I was in a deal when it doesn't exist anymore in New York City schools. So what was a network? What was the intention of it? Because also the networks weren't always there. It was created for a purpose,
Right.
and what was it supposed to do? And which network did you work for? And what was your role in the network?
Initially, I worked because I was in a network twice, but initially I was in network CFN 402. And it was created to support principals and schools, teachers, students, different in different capacities, right? So my role was, I was student services, so I had the ability to support across the schools. I work with principals, I work with teachers, I work with the students. It wasn't just one role. I was there if there was a situation happening with the students. I was there if there was a parent meeting. I did C30s, right? I worked with the schools to complete their C30s, and the C30s hiring administrators.
Yes.
So I had a really great role where I was not just pigeon into one thing. I was supporting the schools as a whole, which as well built my knowledge again because I really saw school how it worked from nuts and bolts, from one end to the other. But one of the big thing about the network was really supporting schools in their capacity. It wasn't. It was like, what do you need us to do
Okay.
for you? Right.
So you did it for how long?
I worked in the network, that CFN 402, for about 2 years,
2 years. Okay.
and then I felt that I went to graduation. I went to one of the school's graduation and I realized
You
that
missed it.
I missed it. I'm sitting there. I remember where I was sitting. And the students were coming down. They're going down to their seating because the graduation class, and I didn't know anyone because
Mm.
usually you're like high fiving and I didn't know any students in that way where you had that relationship. And I said to myself, it's time to go back. It's time to go back.
So where did you go to next?
I ended up going back to the school where I met you.
Oh, Becca, Bronx Early College Academy.
Yes.
So so now what was that like for you returning now? Because now you're walking into a whole new space. So it's not the
Correct.
previous school.
Correct.
And now, and I think at the time we were
6 to 12.
6 to 12.
Correct.
We were, was that the senior year?
That was their senior year.
Yes. So
Yes.
those kids, I had met them in the eighth grade. So I was with them from 8 to 12.
Yes.
And you arrived that 12th grade year.
Correct.
And what was that like? Like, because again, for those of you who don't know, in New York City, especially with secondary, it's either middle school, it's either 6 to 8, 6 to 12, or 9 to 12,
Correct.
typically. So was that different? Was that different for you coming from having been in a traditional 9 through 12 space?
It's a bit, but not much. Like I mentioned earlier, the culture is the same. There's something about that's similar in all schools.
Yeah.
I can't say because cultures are different, right? We know that school cultures are very important to who that school, to what the makeup of that school is. But there's something that you can walk into any New York City school and you feel as if you've been there before. There are a lot of similarities, and so going into 6 to 12, the only difference was now I was working with middle schoolers,
Yes.
right? 6 through 8 students. But no, it wasn't such a difference because the teachers were the same, right? The work was the same. I was a programmer. I did the programming. I also did observation, so the work was basically the same. It's just more students and different grades.
So at the first school where you were an assistant principal, were you the only AP there?
I was the only AP, so I
Okay.
did everything.
So what was it like, coming to the 6 to 12 school and having to work with this narcissist Gemini, you know, and now being a duo? Like, what was the difference? Because a lot of people spend their careers, especially in New York City, we have a lot of small schools,
Yes,
working by themselves as an assistant principal.
correct.
Then versus working in a space where there's maybe two or more. So is there a difference in that space?
Definitely a difference in that space. Much recommended. And then it's recommended because it's really good to have someone in a similar role that you can bounce things off. And we did that,
Yes,
right? We did that
there
a
are a lot of
lot.
that.
And that's where we built our relationship. Standing against the wall in the cafeteria, right? Because we both were covering lunch duty, and just having those conversations. But it's always nice to always have someone that you can speak to who understands your language. Because remember, even though the principal may have been in that position, they have moved on to another role. And so it takes away from the role that you're in. So just having that thought partner is always, always a good thing.
No, I agree with that because one of the things that I believe is that we need as a school leader, you should be a jack of all trades,
Correct.
because at any given time you might have to fall into a role that you're not fully comfortable with, but you should be able to do it well enough so it's not like things don't fall apart. But when you have the benefit of having people who are really good at certain things, and that you could be more effective at what you're good at, like I'll be honest with you, operations wise, that was your thing.
It
Like,
was.
listen, programs are done, and graduation requirements, like
Yes.
that was you.
I could do that in my sleep.
Yeah. See, I'm the culture guy. I'm
Yes.
the listen. Come curse me out. you know.
And I think that's what happened. That's why I was in the background for
Yeah.
the most part.
But at the same time, it was also great knowing that if need be, and many times you did this, I need you to step in this space for me.
Correct.
I need you to be the one to handle this
Correct.
because I'm about to flip out. And listen, this is one of the things I'm going to say. We hide too often how stressful this work is,
Correct.
and there's certain spaces where especially when you're by yourself, you have to like hold in so much
Yes.
and put yourself in spaces that are psychologically and emotionally not safe
Correct.
because it's you.
Right.
But to be in a space, and especially if you're working with a principal who might not necessarily hold you in a space where you are collaborative and you're together and through the thick
Yes.
and thin.
Yes.
Often, a lot of administrators, especially APs, find themselves just being kind of like built-in slaves.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it what it is.
Yes.
And then it's
Yes.
like everything is on you. You gotta do all the
Yes.
you gotta do all the observations. You gotta do all these different things, and you're juggling so much.
Yes.
But to be in a space where you're not by yourself, and I'm saying this not only with another AP or with a school with a principal who says, "Hey, let's be a two-headed, four-armed, four-legged, super
Sure.
administrator
Sure.
versus just being like, here's another thing in your plate, another thing in your plate."
Correct.
So I did. That was you were not the first admin that I worked with, AP that I worked with one on one. And but you were the first that I worked with where there was a symbiosis there. We had each other's back, which is very very
Definitely.
important.
Yes.
And we worked together for a year.
Yes.
Then I was like, I did what you did. I was like, I'm out of here. I'm leaving the DOE. I don't want to do this anymore. And I moved on after that year. I left the state, and then you stayed on. So
I
what
see.
happened next for you?
So I stayed on after you left. However, I received a phone call again. Hey, we need someone here to.
You're like the luckiest person in the world.
I
Like
am the luckiest person in the world. That's how I've moved. It's someone reaching out to me. And that's why, again, relationships is so
relationships,
important.
networking, very important.
Definitely. And I have somehow people take a liking to me. And
I don't know why. I
it must
mean,
be the pretty face. But I received a phone call, and one of the EAs that I was working with at the time I was in 402 became the network leader. So she then called me. She says, I'm now the network leader. I need to fill her position. And she reached out to me. And I said, okay, yes. And that call came on my birthday. On my birthday, I remember, because it was that year was a tough year. I'm not going to say it lightly. It was a tough year. I was there by myself.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, we work
I
together, so
deeply
it's okay.
apologize. No, because the thing is, when I was leaving, I do remember having a conversation with you, and I I was burnt out, you
Yes,
know. But at the same time, you were burnt out too.
yes,
Like we had quite a few sessions behind closed doors where we were just
yes,
like letting it all out, you know.
yes.
And so yeah, that was a tough year. But I'm also a believer that will never put anything in your plate that you cannot handle.
Correct. I believe that
And
too.
again, look at this on your birthday. All of a
All right.
sudden, it's like,
A phone
like
call.
you
Yes,
know,
literally. And I said yes.
yeah.
I
So
said
what was that role like? What was your new role? What was it that you were doing?
so this role, so pretty much a similar role that I was doing, except before I was in the high school side of the network in 402. This time I was in the elementary, um, so I was in the K to 8 portion of the grades and supporting on that level. Again, similar work, right? It's just understanding the work that they have to do because it's just grade specific. But say math, English, relationship, networking, whatever has to be done. And again, I filled that role again of meeting all of the needs that was needed. I could be at one school. I remember being in a school where I was covering for a principal who had and that was one of the things that networks did back then. If the principal had to leave the building, or they would say, "I would like such and such person to come sit in for me." So I did that a lot too. I did building relationships with those principals. I was able to do that. So I remember being at a school one specific day, and I got a phone call. There was a the parent of a child passed away.
Uh,
Yeah, and so could you please head over there? And I think those were the benefits of the network. And the district definitely does the same type of work. I'm not saying it's a difference, but it was one of those like it's like we are on call,
yeah.
right, for situations like that. And I immediately head over there to that school, and and supported the community, the school community. So again, love my job, stay there, and the movement from there took me on to principalship.
So tell us about that. The career principal. Is that what you wanted, or was it another random opportunity that popped up on your birthday?
Both. Well, not on my birthday, but it was what I wanted. So during the time that I was in the network, I decided that I was going to go. So in order to be a principal, you have to be in the pool.
Yes.
And I said, always thinking ahead, always progressing. What is my next step? Always wanted to be prepared for that next step. I decided to put myself into the candidate pool. So I was there, and I'm working in a network. And this was the time when we again shifted to the district. The superintendents were now coming back it was coming back as a district, and one of my the network leader became a superintendent.
No.
And in the district that I was in, there was three 6 to 12 schools. Right, it was actually elementary. It's a K to 8 district for the most part, but there were three 6 to 12 schools.
And because of the for those of you who don't know, in New York City, you have districts. You have number of districts, 1 through 30 something.
Yes,
But then the secondary schools, the high schools,
a separate.
are separate, and we're talking about the specific 9 to 12. But if you're
Correct.
6 to 12, it keeps you in the district because
It could be actually
yeah,
both.
it could be both. But
Yes.
most of the time, the middle school,
You stay in the elementary, middle
elementary.
school.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why that's the case there. So you become the principal of a 6 to 12.
I became
Okay.
the principal of
And
6 to 12.
do you mind naming the school? Because
You,
we're gonna look at your data.
I can say as I was there, the school moved from a priority school to a good standing. So
Of
of
course.
course,
Nothing less. Nothing less.
but it was Antonio Pantoja Preparatory Academy in Stevenson campus.
And now, how was that walking into that building and you're like, snap, it's all me now.
Now that was a different experience. It wasn't like I belonged there, definitely. But just to go back prior to that, a year before that, I decided to go for my doctorate. Right, so I was in a network.
Okay.
So when I became a principal, I was in the middle of getting my I was, taking the courses for my doctorate
So
program.
now you're making me feel really, really like dumb, because when I took over this school, I had got into Columbia's doctoral program,
Okay,
and I was like, I can't do both. Like, no, how?
you
How?
can.
Like,
But now it shows a little bit. Maybe I don't
you're a
know.
different kind of Gemini.
But
That's what it is. But I'm too many things in my head, so I was now. So go ahead,
it
please,
wasn't easy though. It was not an easy.
Miss Valedictorian.
Correct,
Come on
right.
now.
We're set up for success. That was I do remember sitting in the principal's office, not my office at the time, because I had to be vetted. We had to be background checked in order to take on that role. But I remember that for just sitting in that room that was going to be mine when I became the principal, and I'm like, "What are you doing? What are you thinking? Can I do this?"
Yeah,
And 8 years later, yes, I did it. Was not easy, but again, and I want to really speak about relationships and culture. Everything sits on that, on that foundation. And I built a relationship with my staff. I had an amazing staff, and we worked together, to bring the school to good standing. So it's really about the hard work that you put in, but you can't do this work. We cannot do this work alone.
amen.
And it's very important that we know we can't do this work alone as well, because sometimes we're A-type personalities and we can do anything, and we've been successful in so many ways. But in a school, we need to build relationships. We need the people around us. The teachers are very important. And I used to say that to the staff. I'm like, if you guys don't show up for work one day, I'm walking. I'm leaving. Because this work is about all of us putting partnership, right? Parents, teachers, APs, even the students, we're all in a partnership for the betterment of the students, but they have to be accountable also for their work, right? And where they want to progress. But it was a wonderful experience. I would never, ever have changed my destiny of being a principal.
How long were you there for?
8 years.
8 years.
About 8 years.
So then 8 years, and what happened next?
So during the COVID, what happened next was I retired. I there comes a point when you realize that this school needs someone else. You teeter out from where you are. There's only so much you can put in. And you have to realize that. My dissertation was emotional intelligence, of looking at the emotional intelligence of school leaders. And I want to say that I hope that I model that. And also looking at myself and knowing when it's time to make that next step. But also, my one of the reasons I made the change was my daughter had moved to Florida. I'm a nana, which is a really big part of my life. I didn't say that in speaking of my journey, but my family is very important to me, and I wanted to always be part of their lives. And being a school principal, I was only able to go there when it's holidays, right?
Yeah,
So after thinking about what is priority, especially after COVID, what is our priorities,
yeah.
right? Where do we sit in this? So that I made that decision at that time to retire.
Do you think? So first off, I know for a fact that you could have stayed another 8 years and still performed at a high level.
Thank you for
But I
that.
think also emotional intelligence. You're welcome. Is very important, because you know in yourself, you know when it's time for you to shift to something different. Like, I love
Yes.
what you said. You knew it was time for somebody else to come into that role.
Yes.
And many. I'm in my third school. In my previous two schools, I knew when it was time for somebody to take over from what I've done.
Yes.
But the other thing too is also understanding that we have specific skill sets,
Yes.
and we know when it's like, okay, what I'm doing is no longer as effective as I want it to be.
Yes.
And so my question is, do you think that leaders often stay too long, or and from your even from your research, or sometimes are not aware that it might be time for you to take a break, do something different, or even just step away, you know? And first of all, that question, do you think, and what are your thoughts around that?
Of course, we're all different. We're made up differently. And there's some leaders back in the days, right? Leaders were there for many years.
Same school,
It's
30,
in
40
school
years.
30. Yes,
Some actually, I mean, some of them passing away in the
in the
school,
school.
in their office. Like
Correct.
they are like the school bill was their life.
Correct. But I do believe that we should not stay in that role for such a long time because a couple of things. We're transitioning. We're constantly, our world is constantly transitioning, right? We're moving in a different directions. We need new people to come in to continue to move that school forward. New students who are coming in to that school are thinking differently. Students, so if I'm sitting there for a good 20 years, I'm still thinking, even though we're given professional development and there's a lot that we read and we bring a lot of new initiatives into the school, we still bring ourselves every day,
That's true.
right? And we are who we are, our values, uh, our makeup, whatever that is, we bring every day. We show up with us to that job and or that career. So at some point, we have to realize that we are not. That's why retirement is in place. We are not moving with the times. We are not able, and I'm not saying that was my case at the time, but I'm just answering that question that yes, we should give the new APs. We need to give APs the opportunity. We need to give other people because also they're in schools. They're coming in with college education, right? New administrative programs, new things that they're learning. So we also need to open up that space for new leaders to come into play. So on so many different aspects, no, you should not stay in that role for that long.
You know what you're saying right now. Some people, it's almost sacrilegious. People are like, "What do you mean? We need you to be in this. If not you, who else?" But I agree with you. I really believe that especially when we say that not enough people are coming into the profession.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also a lot of it is because not enough of us are transitioning out of the profession as well
Correct.
in a way that allows for innovation to happen.
Correct.
We were talking about AI earlier,
Yes.
and you know my stance with AI. I think it's something that we need to master and really take a hold of. But often I come across teachers and administrators and people who again, don't get me wrong, that length of service is definitely important. But what happens when you hit a wall as a professional where you don't understand
Correct.
the innovations that are coming behind you?
Correct.
So you're holding kids back in your school. You're holding whole entire school community back,
Exactly.
saying no. I remember once upon a time, just this act right here of as you're retired, but me as an active principal in the school system, for me to be creating content and put it online
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, you can't do that. What are you doing? The rules say what rules? No, but you gotta be careful social media. But this is the medium of our time.
Yes.
This is our new television.
Yes.
I watch more things on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on all these other spaces than I actually watch actual television. You
Correct.
know, because it's the space. But people are struggling on how to make sense of this in education.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know you're in that space and you're struggling with it and you're not willing to learn it and implement it and figure out a way to make this work for your kids, you're doing them an injustice because somebody else
Definitely.
is figuring it out. And those kids are now blazing years ahead of you,
And you're
your
holding.
kids,
Mm-hmm.
And at some point you have to realize it might be your fault, you
Yes.
know. And I know some people will probably listen to this and being angry. I'm not talking about listen, I'm not talking about you, if you're watching this right now. But the fact that remember, think about it.
Yeah.
Innovation is a major, major thing.
Of course.
So
And our children, our students, they are at the forefront of this change, right? They are the ones who are going to implement a lot of this change. We need to teach them what they need to know. Isn't that what school is all about? So if we're holding them back, and I'm not saying, look, there's many principals are amazing people, learners. They've
Some,
learned,
some,
they've learned. They're always learning.
yes,
But we
for
do
sure.
have we talk about mindset. There's mindset growth and fix, and that comes as a person. We talk also about the person we are, right? So if you are a person who has a fixed mindset, regardless of where you are in your role or your position, then things are going to be stagnant in terms of change for your students. So it's not saying that you cannot be a 20-year principal in a role and be successful. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying if you're willing to make that shift and to help your community move in that direction, then definitely that's the role for you. But also knowing when it's time to say, I'll see you. There's because there's also another side to the role that we can take on once we retire. We can be coaches, right? Then you just flip the script. We're not packing up. When you retire, you just don't pack up and say, this is it. It's really, retirement is really just shifting your journey. It's taking a different path. But as you know, I'm still in this work.
Yeah, you are definitely,
So,
definitely.
so it's really knowing what you love. What is your passion? My passion is education. It was instilled in me many years ago, as long as I've known myself, and I've taken that. But then the work here and the love for the students and seeing graduation used to be my best day. That was the best day, graduation, when you just see, and not eighth grade. Eighth grade was a nice graduation because you're moving on to high school. But the high school students
Yeah,
who are going on into college or whatever they may choose to do career, that was the best day because that's what the work is all about. Sending out citizens into this world to make a difference.
I agree with that. I mean, I'm in middle school right now, and I've done many middle school graduations. I've done fifth grade graduations, but high school is different,
Hmm.
And I think for me, of course, it's just being excited about what's going to happen next for them and where
Hmm.
they're going,
Hmm.
but also just for me, there's also a lot of anxiety. Like, I hope they're going to be okay.
Of
I
course,
hope we did enough.
of course.
you know. And you know those kids where you're like, oh, they're good, but then there's all those also those other kids where you're just like, I just hope,
Yes.
and then you're like, here's my number, call me, make sure if you need anything, because we're so invested, especially when we've
Totally.
been with them for so long,
Totally. They're our
and
children.
yep, exactly, they
Yeah.
become our children.
Yes.
So we're coming towards the end of this episode here with Dr. Singh, and one of the things I want you to do is to impart wisdom. Like, you've had a incredible career. You've
Definitely.
seen it all, and we have a lot of the audience for this show is aspiring leaders
Hmm.
and also leaders who are in the seat. They could be new leaders, mid-career, even late, even towards the end of their careers, who are often sending me direct messages and
Hmm.
or asking or sharing their thoughts on their journey,
Hmm.
and what wisdom would you give, let's say, a new or aspiring school leader on how to move into the role, or those who are in the middle who might be feeling a little stale and not quite sure what to do next, and then those at the end of their careers who are contemplating and are afraid of the R word, the retirement, like what. So for those three segments, what wisdoms would you share with them?
So let's start from the ones who are in the retirement
Okay.
phase. I would say, because I can speak from experience, I did not know there was life after principalship or retiring. I struggled to retire. As much as I knew it was time, my daughter was the one who was like, Mom, it's time. It's time. And And I said, well, what am I going to do? What is that next step? Because we don't know, right? We don't know what we don't know. And we've since spent so many years in this system where we're coming to work every day, right? We're there until 7, 8 o'clock, whatever it may take.
Yeah.
Saturdays, right? You're here Saturday, you're here today. So I would say there is life after. And there's a great career after because there's so much of a need. There's a need for the coaching piece, but there's need for even being a support system. You know, you don't have to. There's new leaders. There's being a college professor, supporting student who are student teachers. There's just so much out there. It's just again building your network and building those relationships. But so I would say for those people who are thinking of retirement, if you're thinking of it, it is time. You know when you know. So yes, make that move, and also the universe settles itself.
Very
I will
true.
say that is the universe takes care of
It really
us,
does.
and so things will come. So that now the middle leaders who are still has another 10 years to go, or 5, 6, 7 years, I would say take care of yourself. Find a space where you can do self care, because we really jump all in every day, every day, even Saturdays. We're here, we're working. Then on weekends, Sundays, we're still working because we're preparing for the week
Checking
ahead,
emails
checking
and
emails. So
yeah.
there's never a downtime. But then what happened to our family? The ones who are home, because everyone is our family. And I remember my daughter used to say, "Mom, you have 500 children." And but thankfully for that, she understood my role and kind of imparted herself into that family rather than separating and say you had 499 and then there's me, right? Thankfully she did that. But I would say find time to maintain that family relationship, the home family, your personal relationship, because that's important. Whilst you maintain that professional family, because there has to be a balance. And in finding that balance, also you will open up that growth mindset and learn new things. You'll be in a space where you're not feeling burnt out, where you can say, you know what, let me see what AI has to offer, or whatever else innovative things are coming through from the chancellor's office, right? There's a lot coming from there, and you want to be in that space. And then for aspiring leaders, I would say there is not a better job in this world than being a leader in the New York and in the New York City school system. I am privileged to have worked in the New York City school system. So
I thank you for that. Wow. The underlying theme I'm hearing here is just be self-aware.
correct.
Really being
Emotion,
self-aware and being emotionally
emotional intelligence.
emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And unfortunately, even though it's you hear it all, you hear it everywhere: emotional intelligence, self-awareness. But the actual practical application of it to self is something that is often missing.
Correct.
And that's something that I on a daily basis I have to stop, take a breath, and ask myself, what am I feeling, and what am I sensing, and making sure that I'm also allowing for the universe to do its thing, and not
Correct.
always banging my head against the door. You
Correct.
know, wow. So we're gonna close this out now, and I know for a fact that Dr. Singh is gonna be back. We've been talking for quite some time now about this space,
Yes.
creating this space, and also bringing other leaders in to have these kinds of conversations.
Right.
I could tell you, and you tell. So you were lucky; you had all these people from in the system who were pouring into you.
Correct.
I didn't have that as much. I kind of met people along the way,
Okay.
but a lot of leaders, even aspiring leaders, there isn't a lot of content, like authentic content saying, hey, we are human beings. This is our
Yes.
journey.
Yes.
How often have you been in a space and people hear former principal, or well, you were a principal, and they go, oh, snap, okay, that's the principal.
Yes.
You're like, guys, stop. It's not
Oh,
that
I do
serious.
that all the
I'm
time.
just a human being.
Yes.
And the conversation changes, and all of a sudden
Yes.
it turns to like, ma'am. And,
Yes.
and I'm like,
Correct.
we're human beings. We have families. We have
Yes.
children.
We've
We've had struggles, immense struggles.
correct.
We bleed, we cry, we go
Yes.
through all these things. But at the end of the day, we're passionate about supporting our community,
Yes.
students, teachers, families,
Yep.
everyone, even the peripheral, Um, and it's funny. I shared this with someone yesterday. Like of course, there's a bodega, and every time I walk in, the guy who works in there, he's like, "I didn't see you for the past couple of days. Is everything okay? You're here on a Saturday. What's going on? You need some rest." And you realize what I do also impacts him
Yes.
and the greater space as
Yes.
well.
True.
So it's one of those things. Just being aware of that is very, very important.
It's a ripple
Yeah,
effect.
and we're going to learn together from
Yes.
more leaders, and um and I'm asking Dr. C to hold me accountable because we're both Geminis. We hold each other accountable. We have a tendency of being like over the place, but this is something that's very important, and this is something that we're going to do for you, the audience that are watching, and please share your story. And if you're interested in being on this space, let us know.
Sure.
Come down to the South Bronx. We sit down here. We have a conversation. And I think with that being said, we're going to wrap it up. Any last words?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having me here today. It was really a great experience, but I really want to stress the importance of relationship, networking,
Yes.
and because I truly believe in emotional intelligence and being that leader, because what is emotional intelligence? It's built in relationships, having that social empathy. Empathy is so important, especially in the world that we're living in today. Really take that and understand our community, everyone, and finally ourself, right? That self awareness, that self regulation. So take that with you, but self care first, and keep that balance.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
with that being said, we're going to close out this episode of Sneaker Principle Podcast. And until next time.